Oh, Kelsey and I were dancing behind the scenes, but she can't see me. I can see her. But then she stopped dancing right as the intro ended, and I continued looking like a damn fool. Um, how y'all
Sorry.
doing, guys?
Sorry,
Welcome
Jill.
to Marvelous Movie Mondays with Kelsey and Dill. I'm Dill. That's Kels. Kelsey, how's your week been? Have you been busy at all, Kels?
My week's been great, Jill.
Mm,
I just am getting back from Vancouver, Canada, because I was my friend was lucky enough to get tickets to the last weekend of the Eras tour. It is now Monday right now for everyone, so that means the Eras tour is officially over. My heart is breaking. If you heard a crack, that was the sound of my heart breaking.
Guys,
Um,
Kelsey made it to the last weekend of the Eras tour. Like, think about that. Like that this tour is. I mean, they might revive it in some way, shape, or form. I don't think it'll
yeah,
be fully what it is, but that's amazing, Kels. That's like the Taylor Swift dream, the
yeah.
Swiftie dream right there. Like you're living the dream. How was Vancouver aside from the Taylor Swift of it all? A nice
Yeah.
city, nice place, good time, nice people. A lot of people eating bacon and saying, "Hey,
No, yeah, it's a really cute city. The strongest Canadian accent I heard was from the man at Border Patrol who had to like check us in, and
mm,
he like said like he was like, "Oh, the house and about, eh?" Like he said "a" in a sentence and
mm."
everything, and I felt like I was at like Epcot.
Yeah, big summer
I was
blowout. Yeah,
I was like, "Oh my god."
yeah,
But
cool.
yeah, Vancouver was really cool. It's like very like Soho in New York City, but like bigger and
Oh,
cleaner.
nice.
It
Nice.
was kind of hard to gauge what the city is like out of context of a Taylor Swift concert is happening
Right, because
because
everyone there was there for a purpose.
everyone there, it was just riddled with Swifties. All the restaurants and all the bars were doing Taylor Swift themed drinks and trivia nights and listening
So
parties.
you essentially went to Taylor Swift town. Like you went to a
Yes,
town that's so cool. Because like, when the
essentially,
Eras
yeah.
tour came to like MetLife, like people that don't know New Jersey and New York well enough, like MetLife is not in the middle of like a city. Like it's New York Stadium, but you have to like take
Yeah,
a subway from the city, and it's not like
yeah,
in Jersey enough to feel like it's part of Jersey. It's kind of this weird like parking lot in the middle of nowhere. So it's
mhm.
kind of cool that you get like the kind of full experience of being in a town, almost like a college town when there's a game. It kind of has
Yeah.
that kind of atmosphere to it. Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's honestly for the best when it comes to MetLife because as I've learned, when your stadium is in the middle of your major city, it's a nightmare to actually get into the stadium. Like instead of just walking around a parking lot to find your gate, you're walking through around city blocks to get to
Mm,
your gate. And so
yeah.
it was a little bit of a hassle, but luckily enough, like the Swiftie community, we're all very respectful. We all want the best for one another. So it was like nothing crazy,
Yeah.
fighting or anything trying to get in.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but it
was in
was
Detroit, filming Band on the Run the weekend
mhm.
she was there for Detroit, so it just
Oh my
lined up.
god.
We didn't go because we didn't know,
Right,
and even if we decided to go, we couldn't afford it, let alone get in from set. We finished shooting at, like, 7 p.m., so we didn't go,
right.
but, it was one of those things where we were like, "Oh, why is there so much traffic today? It's Detroit." And then we're like, "Oh," because
Taylor
Detroit
Swift.
usually, very easy to navigate, but yeah, what were the special songs? What were the secret songs? Special songs, it's like a big holiday song.
Our surprise songs were a mashup of Haunted from Speak Now and Wonderland, which is
Ooh, love that.
um a deluxe track from
1989.
1989.
Mhm.
And then those were the songs on the guitar, and then our piano songs were a mashup of Never Grow Up from Speak Now and The Best Day from Fearless. So it was very,
Ooh,
very sweet, very,
big
very
throwback.
sentimental.
Mhm.
Yeah, you could just tell that she's just in her feels, during these last couple of shows. She really just wanted to give it
Yeah,
felt just like a big warm hug she wanted to give all the
yeah,
fans for just, like, all the love and support over the past 2 years that this tour's been going on, and it was
awesome.
just so special to be a part of.
Yeah, wow, like, yeah, that's so cool. I didn't know it was the last weekend, like, that makes it yeah, I knew you were going to Vancouver for Taylor Swift, but,
Yeah,
the fact that, like, you got to see the last weekend of the tour, that's something you could tell kids and grandkids and generations, hopefully, when Taylor is an even bigger name than she is now, which I can't even imagine. But
right.
yeah, Kels, was that the best thing you watched this week? I was gonna ask you that question, but did you see anything else? Is that
You
it?
know, I think, the Eras Tour is gonna have to take it for this week.
Gotcha.
That was
What was your
definitely the
favorite
best thing
plane
I
watch?
watched.
Are you a plane watcher? Or are you more of a reader or a podcaster, musicer, or do you
You
watch
know
movies on the plane?
Jill, unfortunately, both of my planes to and from Vancouver didn't have TVs.
Mm,
So I was listening to music and trying to get as much sleep as I could
right,
because I had very early morning flights both times.
right.
And
Okay,
and I'm a big reader on a plane.
gotcha.
Love to read.
Yeah, I'm a big movie guy on a plane, but the thing is I have to use it
Mm,
on my phone. I have to like download it to Netflix and
mm,
then put in
mhm.
my AirPods because those the headphones they give you like when you
Are
hear the
not good.
airplane, you can't hear anything. Yeah, and
Yeah.
especially in cinema, it's a visual and oral form of entertainment. So, I definitely
Mhm.
like my noise cancelers when I'm on a plane watching a movie. But yeah, if it's honestly, it's worse when there's TVs because then I have to use their janky little plugins, you know.
No,
So
yeah.
I like when I could just kind of resort to my Netflix, even though I'm also with you. I try to sleep on planes, but I'm also very self conscious about my snoring. So I try not to like fully sleep, but I try to get in a position where I can like at least shut some eye. But if
Yeah.
my head tilts back just a minor degree and I start snoring, I'm very embarrassed. But you got to do what you got to do. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, best thing I watched. Were you
Oh,
gonna
you
finish a
tell.
plane
No,
thought?
I was just gonna say, funnily enough, our friend Lauren had downloaded the episodes of Agatha All Along, so I got to watch her
Okay,
react to,
very cool.
the first couple of episodes that she got to see.
Nice.
And actually, you did ask me before if I had news, Dylan, and I said no, but I actually sent you this news on Instagram that Patti
Yes.
LuPone
Yes.
got a Critics' Choice nomination for her performance in
Yes.
Agatha All Along, which is
Absolutely,
exciting.
yeah, so exciting. Critics' Choice film nominations don't come out yet, so I didn't even have them on my radar. I've been like really honing in on award season this year, really wanting to like soak it all up. I always do, but like even go the extra mile. If people are in our Discord, they know like I posted a chart today or yesterday of like all the precursors for all the different award nominees just to kind of track what's winning all these critic groups. I didn't even realize the TV awards already came out, so you sent me
Mm,
that. I was like, oh shoot, and she's the only nominee. And I thought it was also interesting they submitted it as a comedy series rather than a mini series, which could
mm,
infer that we might get more Agatha, which is exciting, or they're just doing it strategically to get awards. But usually, if it's a
mm,
one and done season, it's a mini series. But this one is being sold as a comedy series, meaning that it's still open ended to continue. Now, obviously, some shows end after a season, but it's not being marketed, or at least not into the awards consideration, as a mini series, which gives me hope that there might be more Agatha All
mm,
Along, or at least something more up that sleeve. But yeah, Patti LuPone getting a nomination, very, very exciting. No film nominations for any of the films from this year in Marvel. There have only been a few. There's only been three, and we'll talk about them on the show in just a bit. That's what our episode is today. This is kind of our wrap up for the year. I mean, we have one more trivia and we have a Kraven review coming for the next 2 weeks, but this is our last just kind of sit down chat with you all. So this is kind of our end of the year wrap up. But the best thing I watched this week, it was Gladiator 2. I freaking loved
cool.
Gladiator 2. I just had so much fun, and it was one of those things where I had heard hype going in, and then like once audiences started seeing it, the hype kind of lowered, especially with Wicked and Moana. And then I saw it, and the hype raised again. I was like, why are people shitting on this so much? It is so good. I think it's honestly really a lot better than Wicked, but I'm not going to say that in many circles. If you've made it 8 minutes
Mm,
into our video, you're a loyal, devoted person that I trust and love and want to share that information with. But I know if I say that in the wrong circles, I might get in trouble. But yeah, that was great. And then they just had Paul Mescal hosting SNL, and he did like a whole like Gladiator musical skit to like be like, oh, we want to get in on the fun with Wicked and Moana and stuff. Yeah, I just thought it was so well done, so well crafted, great performances all around. Joseph Quinn was great, and Denzel and Paul Mescal. So if anyone is hesitant to see it, I recommend it. I know people have not been digging it, but I do think
mm.
if you don't want to see Wicked a seventh time, and don't want to see whatever crap Moana 2 was, because I also saw that and I did not like it at all.
Oh god.
If you want to see something good and just fun, and if especially if you're into the sweaty muscular dudes, that's also something the movie offers. It wasn't particularly an interest for me, but I mean, hey, a lot of people in my audience loved it. So yeah, if you're a Pedro Pascal fan, if you're an MCU fan, he's going to be your Mr. Fantastic. Go support him. Joseph Quinn is also going to be in Fantastic Four. I just made that connection right now. Two of the Fantastic
Oh,
Four are in
yeah.
Gladiator 2. That's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
Hmm.
I don't think they ever
Yeah,
interact in the film except for like once or twice. But anyway,
right.
best thing I watched this week, and it was not Moana 2. It was Gladiator 2. But
Cool.
I don't want to get into my full Moana 2 spiel. I'll probably review it at some point. But blech. Anyway, I think we should transition
Anyway,
into the topic we're talking about because Kelsey's very tired, and I think 10 minutes of
cool
business
thing.
is 10 minutes too long. So let's get into what our main topic is, and that is kind of our end of the year ranking. We sometimes do this as like its own episode. We sometimes just do this as like the bookend after we finish reviewing a series, like we did for like Loki or something. But we decided to
Mhm.
devote a whole episode to it. There were 6 Marvel projects that came out this year, starting with Echo. Then we got X-Men '97 and Madam Web around the same time. And then we also got Deadpool Wolverine in the summer. And then we just recently got Agatha All Along and, of course, Venom 3. So there's 6 things to talk about, 6 things to rank. Super easy, but we did want to just kind of put a button on this year. In general, Kels, how was the year 2024 for Marvel? Not including the stuff we watched, like Howard the Duck and all the old stuff, but like this year in Marvel. What do you think?
Yeah, Dill. I mean, it I think that it's hard because I feel like we got 2 projects that really felt like, well, obviously one was the 3rd in a trilogy, and one just
Mm,
kind of felt like very much a nice final chapter for a specific character, or like, getting some closure in some sense for another character. And then we had other characters, other projects that were, introducing brand new characters, or like, setting up uh future possibilities for characters. So it's kind of hard to sum this year up in kind of like, saying that, oh, it was a bad year for Marvel, it was a good year for Marvel.
yeah.
I think it was an okay year for Marvel. Um
Yeah.
just because I just feel like, you know, it felt like a step in the right direction. That's what I'll say about
Yeah.
this year.
I think the actual quality of the art as a whole is not as high as it's been in past years. Like I think it's just kind of like mediocre. If we're like looking at like if we're gonna average all our scores for all these movies up, it's probably gonna land somewhere in the 5, 6 out of 10 range. But what I like about it is that it's not oversaturated. Like even though there were some big projects, it didn't feel like we were kind of overwhelmed by so much Marvel. I hate the C word, but Marvel content to where
Mm,
we were drowning in it. Where I feel like in past years it's been like, oh, we had 9 projects this year. It was like WandaVision into Falcon and the Winter Soldier into Loki. It was just so much that I feel like
mhm,
this one, it's like the projects that were great, like genuinely great, were fantastic. And the ones that
mhm,
weren't good were like not that bad. So it kind of evens out to be pretty okay. But I think just the fact that we didn't get so much of it, it just makes it more refreshing. And even the ones that are bad, like the one that's my lowest ranked in enjoyment would probably be my number 3. Like it's just like it leads to good
right.
conversation. I think that's what's fun about this year, especially because it is so polarizing, because you have movies that some are calling the worst of the year, some are calling the best of the year. You've got shows that have kind of, rejuvenated that, because last year we ended on Secret Invasion and we hated it. So I think
Mhm, mhm,
or I guess Loki too, but Secret Invasion we hated so much that it kind of soured the end of the year. Whereas I think this year it was consistent, not hitting the big peaks, consistently, but I do think it wasn't hitting too many lows either. And because there were only 6 projects, it didn't feel overwhelming. So yeah, I'm happy with the year. I think it could have had a few more standouts. I think there's one that stands above them all, in my opinion. But I also
yeah,
know that's not necessarily everyone's opinion either. So it could just be a taste thing. But I thought it was good. I thought it was solid. You know.
yeah. Yeah, because even, like, obviously, I feel like we both have the same project that's coming in dead last, but I feel like even the projects that I have lower on my list weren't bad, and it's not like I didn't enjoy them. It's just that there was other projects this year that were so strong and so
Hmm.
solid
Yeah.
that it wouldn't even be, it was very clear what kind of like my top 2 were gonna be easily for this year.
Cool. Yeah, I,
So
I
do you
definitely think
think?
we're gonna have the same bottom, and I think that's it. I really think that's it. I think we're gonna be a little different on everything else, but I think that's gonna make for a
Okay.
fun conversation. So why don't we
Yeah.
jump right in, Kels?
Yeah.
I like to end with you on these, so I would like to
Okay.
start. No, yeah, because I want you to have the final say. Like this is my number one. So I want it's kind of ladies first, but it's reverse psychology because we're really going ladies last, but it's because we're saving the best for last. Anyway,
Gotcha.
men
Thank
men
you.
first on the show. That's our slogan. No, I'm kidding.
Men first.
Hashtag men first. No, I'm gonna go first with my number 6, because I think it might also be your number 6. But again, it's the one that if I had to rewatch these, this would be like 3. but because I'm going based on quality, I'm going to put Madam Web at 6. I just think it's, for me, the worst film just in terms of its design. It is not a well-made film, but I'm
Yeah.
entertained by it. Like I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like I would watch it. Like it might get a Pickle Award nomination for worst film, but that is a compliment.
Yeah.
And we had a whole Framework episode about it because it's so bad it's good, because I genuinely think it's my third most entertaining thing of the year. Like I think if we're ranking it by enjoyment and entertainment, it's my number 3. So I think quality, it's a 6 of 6, but in entertainment it's like 3 out of 6. Like I really do enjoy it. It's just it's not good. I'm not gonna sit here and defend it as a good piece of art, but that's my
Yeah.
number 6.
Dill, that is also my number 6.
Okay.
So I'm glad we're in agreement.
Whew. Imagine if you were like, no, Dylan, what are you talking about?
Yeah, there's there's one thing we can all say about Madam Web, and that it's definitely memorable.
Yeah,
for
we'll never
better or for
forget.
worse, we'll never forget what happened to us and our brains when we watched that movie in the theaters.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so fascinating and so comical and so it's a wonderful disaster of like how badly something can go wrong in like post production. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's really it's so fascinating to me, and I feel like it should be studied. I feel like
Absolutely,
there
yeah.
needs to be like a documentary released about like what happened to Madam Web. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not kidding.
Like
Like
I
a
almost want
true
them to
crime, like
take our Framework episode and then throughout it just like insert directorial like talking heads talking about it, because
yeah.
I think we covered it so much and even then we didn't even scratch the surface. It's one of those films that I think 10 years from now we'll still be talking about it in a failure sense, where even Morbius I feel like is kind of come and gone. Like people are like, Morbius, whatever. It wasn't entertainingly bad, whereas this one is, and I think that's so
Yeah.
cool. So
Yeah, for
that's your
sure.
number 6, right? You said.
Yes.
All right, so I
Indeed.
guess I am back up now for number 5. And any other words on Madam Web, or should we continue on?
I'm obsessed with the idea of like having like a really dramatic, like super serious, like they're talking about like some really tragic event that occurred, where you just like sit down with like a black background and like it says like director, and then they're just like, it started off like any other film project, and it just took a turn for the worse. And it's just like this really dramatic, like true crime Netflix series. I think someone
Yeah.
should make it. You're
All right.
allowed to take that idea if you're listening and you want it.
All right, this is where I'm gonna lose some people. I know it. I know it. I
Okay.
just know I know I'm gonna lose some people, and I know it's probably not gonna be a number 5, but I'm gonna stick by my guns. I when I'm ranking this on quality, I'm putting Deadpool and Wolverine at number 5. That is my number 5.
Dill, I had a feeling.
Why
As
was
soon as
that?
you started like prologuing it, I was like, okay, he's putting Deadpool and Wolverine at number 5.
Yeah. Okay. I have trouble with this one because I do enjoy it. Like I didn't sit through
Yeah.
it being like like a lot of other people did.
Right.
A lot of people
Right.
were the opposite, where they were losing their shit over it. I think that's a little uncalled for. I think the thing is, the cameos make a great first theatrical experience. When you
Yeah.
rewatch it, not as good. That's
Right.
just with every Marvel film though. So I'm not going to dock this one in particular, but I think what it is just that I feel like at times, especially because I did take my mom to see this after a month after we had seen it, so it was a whole month removed from the freshness of it. I just feel like on rewatch, I struggled to find its own identity as its own movie that wasn't just trying to be a connective piece in the overall puzzle. And I think that's my biggest thing, is that it felt like it was too referential. And I get it, Deadpool's referential, but I think it's more so, breaking the fourth wall is one thing, but then also just like all these callbacks and all this different studio gibberish. I honestly think if you are an alien who has never heard of the MCU and watches film, you're going to be completely lost, because there's just so many references to Fox, to Disney, to the merger, to the MCU, to the multiverse, all these things, to Logan, to the other X-Men movies that I just don't think you get on first watch. But that's the thing, is like we're watching this as fans who have seen all the other things, but I also think just as a standalone movie it doesn't work for that sense, where the 4 movies above it I think work better on their own, when they stand on their own. Like you don't need WandaVision to like Agatha, and I don't even think you need to watch the first 2 Venoms to enjoy the third one, whereas here I really don't know if you can enjoy this one if you don't have all the previous knowledge. But that's a lot of films in the MCU. What I don't love about it is that I just don't find the comedy very funny. I think that's really what it was. Is I was into the action more than I was the comedy. I think for Deadpool, it should be the other way around, where like the action can be okay, but the comedy is what you go for. For me, I stayed for the action. The action sequences are dope. It was the comedy that fell flat for me, and I think it's just
Mm,
because it is such a subjective thing, comedy. But yeah, I thought there were good moments of it, but I think Deadpool's good in small doses, and I do think this was just too big a dose for me. But I don't know, and I also just think I'm such a Logan fan that yes, they do a good job explaining how this isn't the same Logan, but it's still Hugh Jackman, so I'm still going to be thinking of that. And when you bring Daphne Keene in, I'm still going to be thinking of that legacy, and I just don't think that film is going to hold up as well now because this movie showed us Hugh Jackman once again in the suit with the claws. So it's like, you couldn't just let it die, and I get that's the whole point, but it's also like yeah, I could go on and on because I have so many issues with it, but I did have a fun time. Like, it's not my dead last because I do think it is still more competently made than Madam Web. There's also the
yeah,
whole Fox thing where it's like, are you shitting on Fox or are you making it a love letter? Because this whole time you're like poking fun at Fox and you're like, screw you, Fox, I'm going to Disneyland. And then you're like, at the end of the credits, you're doing this whole homage to Fantastic Four 2015, who no one liked. I'm like, what
yeah,
are we doing here? Like,
yeah.
it's just so confusing. And I think every time I rewatch this feels like the No Way Home of this year, where every time I rewatch it, it loses value because there's nothing like the first time when you're in the theater in the atmosphere. And I think this is a film that works solely in the atmosphere of the hype of opening night. And I think it suffers with
Mhm.
repeat viewings. But have you seen it again since the first time or no?
I have not watched
Okay.
it
Okay.
since
So I'm very curious to see what you
the
think when you
first time.
rewatch it to see
Yeah.
if you have the same issues. Because I just think, yeah, when there's no applause break, like it was just me and my mom in the theater. So like, because we had seen it a month after it was out, so it's not like we could even like feed off of the energy of an audience. It was just like Blade came out and she was like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Exactly." Like it's one of those things where if you're not 100% in it for the atmosphere and the world building, like I just don't think it works enough on its own. Where even
Right.
films and series that are follow ups to other films and series, I think do it more successfully. So that's my number
Yeah.
five. But I'm sure we'll hear the positives a little bit more when it's higher on your list because I assume it's not your number five.
It's not my number
Okay.
5. I think mostly because still the difference between you and I is that I have not watched it again, so I
Mm,
haven't felt where it really falls flat, like where
gotcha.
what you're saying. Like my memory of watching this film was the excitement that I had in the
Yeah.
theater. And like obviously we were both kind of on the same page when we did our review and we started like really getting down to the nitty-gritty of it all. And we were like, wait, actually, this wasn't a great movie. Did it
Yeah.
have exciting elements to it? Yes, but was the actual like context of the movie and the plot and the moments like did they all 100% make sense all the time? Actually, no, now that we're breaking it down and
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah.
But I think what I guess we'll talk about it later talk when we get to where it is on my list. Um but what was I gonna say? Oh, the funny thing is that Dill, you're absolutely right. You do have to like know all of these movies and all these projects to get the references throughout the movies. But the ironic part for me is that I feel like the only movies that you don't really need to watch going into it are the previous two Deadpool movies.
Right, I've said it from the beginning, it's a terrible it's a
Yes.
terrible 3rd Deadpool movie, it's a
Yeah.
fine MCU merger movie. I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it has nothing to do with what happened to him in those first 2 movies. Like, all the side characters that are around him in those 2 movies get completely tossed to the side. Vanessa is not in it at all. It's some weird act 3 breakup that always happens in every, like, romance book
Every
I read.
sequel.
They
Yeah,
break
it's a
up
movie sequel thing too,
and
yeah.
movies, yeah.
Yeah, like, they break up before the next movie, and it's like, we spent the whole movie trying to get them together, now they're just
Right.
off camera broken up. Yeah, it's my least favorite thing ever. I hate it.
Like, there's a way to give a relationship conflict and higher stakes without having to set them back from square one again and making them be apart just for them to, like, build their relationship back together again. You know what I mean? And I feel
Yeah.
like people it's just, like, such a lazy way to, like, create now an interpersonal conflict in a film.
Yeah.
But, no, I totally
Sorry,
get
I
your
was fussing for
critiques of
my
it
pen.
all.
I dropped
No,
my
you're
pen, but I
good.
found it. I was listening to you. I know people are watching me, like, go like this, and they're like, "Is he seasick?"
Yeah.
Okay. What is your
They're
number
like,
5,
"Is
Kelsey?
Dill dancing again? What's happening?"
Yeah, sometimes just
Um,
break out into dance here.
my number 5, it pains me to say it a little bit just because it was truthfully the first project of this year, so I don't
Mm,
remember a ton of it unfairly. I don't remember disliking it a ton. I remember having a good time with it, but I also remember as soon as it ending, feeling kind of like, oh, okay, like about it, like very middle of the road, like not super excited for what's to come next, but all of that to say my number 5 is Echo. Um and truthfully, just because I don't remember it all that well, and I think that's working against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, they
Didn't
kinda
stick
just
with
dumped
me.
it. Yeah, and we covered it week by week, but I think the
Mhm.
biggest pitfall that this series had was that they released it all at once, and it was January, and they released it all at once, and it was done, and I just feel like for a character that is diverse and has a disability and is a
Mhm.
woman, like, it is a really shameful thing the way they marketed it. I have it a little higher just because I do think memorability, it doesn't work, but it was well made, so I don't know. It sounds like you don't have any thoughts on Echo. I don't either, but do you have any other like thoughts on why Echo is your number 5?
Um, I mean, just, like, mainly because, I'm trying to think of, like, any standout moments in my head or any
Right.
episodes that, like, made me, like, praise it, or I was gonna go back and listen to our reviews on every episode. I didn't have time before we started
Yeah.
filming, but I was like, "What did we even say about Echo? Did we like it? Did we hate it? Were
Right.
we
Because
in the
yeah,
middle of the road on
I
it?"
can't even tell you what the action was. I know Kingpin showed up and he was alive
Yes.
and like he had
Yes.
the communication device where he could
Yes.
like sign to her through a hologram or whatever,
Oh,
which is
yeah, I
still
remember
weird
that.
looking back on it. But yeah, like I agree. Okay, I'll just tell you, it's on my number 4. So it's the next
Okay.
spot up for me. So we can just continue talking about it. But it's like
Yeah.
what I liked about it was that it really tried to be a series. Like it's a mini series, but it tried so hard to make it episodic by giving each episode like its own god or its own like ancestor that they were trying to tie it into. Like each episode opened with a different ancestor and their story, and that tied into what Echo's journey would be that episode. I
Oh,
liked that. I
yeah.
like that. I think that
Yeah.
was a really good framing device, and it made it feel like a series. Where I think even like something like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which we both like, or other shows, like it felt like those shows were just like big movies that were cut up. Whereas like WandaVision, it was like every episode was a different TV show. Same as another show we'll talk about today, where every episode had like a different homage. It was a different witch's trial. Here, it was like every episode had a different ancestor. So I think it did a good enough job making itself a series. The thing is, it is so inconsequential. It's the opposite of Deadpool Wolverine, where Deadpool Wolverine
Mm.
feels so full of just the multiversal timeline shit and needs to just be its own thing and exist its own thing, and it isn't. Whereas this one exists so far in its own lane that it doesn't feel necessary. And I think it's like we need to
Mm.
find that like happy medium where it feels like the stakes are there for the series, but it's not. There's personal stakes, fine. I like the character. I think the action was fine, but again, even the action isn't super memorable right now in my mind. Like I can't pick out an action scene. Whereas like Hawkeye, I could definitely think of some. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's my number 4. I think it's fine, but it's the least of the 3 series we got this year.
I remember there being a scene with a train. That's, like, vague in my mind,
No memory for me.
but, yeah, and yes, thank you for bringing up the ancestors because that I remember now. Now I'm painting a clearer picture. Um, but yeah, if anything, I remember feeling more confused about what was going on with this character. If it was, like, a final chapter kind of thing, like, we're gonna leave her be where she is, or if, like, we can expect her in future things. Kingpin bothers me because he reminds me of Michael Myers, and it's just like, why he's flesh and bone, you should be able to kill him. Like,
Yeah,
why can't this guy die like a
yeah.
normal dude? I don't know. So we'll
Because
see what
Kelsey, that's how it
happens.
is. I don't know. I love his voice. Yeah, we're
You
definitely
do
divided on
great.
Kingpin, but I yeah,
Yeah.
I want to kind of rewatch it. It's almost been a whole year now, so I might owe this a rewatch. I mean, obviously next year it will be part of our trivia league, so we're gonna have to kind of rewatch some of it to add some questions.
Right. Of course.
Just to let all our trivia competitors know, next year is when we're gonna just add all these projects: Echo, Agatha, what else? 97 and Deadpool and Wolverine to the
Deadpool.
thing. We're not gonna put the 2 Sonys in there, don't worry, but we'll put the other 4
Yeah.
in. So start studying now because it'll be up next year. But um, technically this one number 1 contender match that's happening next week is the end of our tournament, which started last year. So to keep the rules clear, we didn't add Echo or anything like that, but we're gonna eventually have to go back to Echo for questions. So maybe we'll like do like an Echo revisited episode next year just to be like, what was that? Because I think really when you drop everything, it was only like 5 episodes, right? 5 or 6, and they
Yeah,
dropped
I
it
think it
all at
was
once.
6,
So
yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it really gives you no time to really like soak it all in. Like all these other shows, you get weeks and weeks and weeks to just live with it, and this one didn't. So it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. But all right, that was my number 4. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is Venom: The Last Dance. I think it's appropriate that it sits somewhere in the middle of my list.
Mhm.
Like I said before, like it's not that I didn't like it, it's just that it wasn't as strong as the other projects that I have ahead of it, in my opinion. I had a good time with it. I thought that it was a great final ending for Eddie and Venom, but some of it did get a little silly goofy for me at some points, to the point of like this is kind of like unrealistic and like not great. I just thought like ineffective storytelling at some parts, but
Mm.
for the most part, there was good action, good visuals, good characters, with the family. And I just thought that I was honestly thinking about this movie, I think like on the plane, like randomly, and I was thinking about how it would have been so much more interesting had they fleshed out the surrounding characters a little bit more. But I think in order to do that, they should have introduced, characters like Juno Temple and the military guy and, whoever the
Christmas.
mysterious man in
Yeah.
that random, like, one-shot scene was that was like, "Oh, we found him. Let's go get him," and we never found
Yeah.
out who that was kind of thing.
Who I did was Let There Be Carnage was just on TV the other day, and he is in that movie too. It's just he's such an
Yeah.
insignificant part of that where I'm like, wait, this is a carryover character? Uh-oh.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like I just feel like if these characters were fleshed out from the beginning of from the trilogy, I feel like it would have been a much more interesting story to tell between like, the scientists that want to save their research and the military people that want to protect the planet and kind of
Right.
having this great conflict and then having Eddie and Venom, still do their buddy cop thing in the middle of it. I think it could have been a really, really solid franchise, and I think it would have been way more well perceived. But because they were throwing in all these characters in the last movie, where your main focus should really be about the two main people in it and their emotional goodbye to one another, it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah,
So it's my number
and it's
4.
interesting because they have Michelle Williams like as a character fully established. Like, why wouldn't they just go back to that well? Like, why do you need
Right.
to introduce Brain? My least favorite thing about a third movie and a final movie in a franchise is when they introduce
Mhm.
characters that are so consequential when this is the
Mm.
last movie. Like, we're wrapping it up anyway. Like, it just like that's what I really like about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 because yes, you introduced the Sandman as a new villain, but turns out he's the one who killed Uncle Ben. So it's just like this whole like, oh wow, so he
Mm.
is important,
Mhm.
and I love that about it. It's like these characters that are random actually do have a purpose. They are intentional for the story. And then Eddie Brock, who's like a new character in that movie, sure, he's a new character, but you make him this foil for Spider-Man's job. Spider-Man's job has been a constant of the past 3 films. So he's essentially J. Jonah Jameson. He just turns into the Venom. Like, he adds that function. And then Harry is the other villain. Like, I like how they use what they already have to be the
Yes.
villains of that movie.
Yeah. 100%.
I have it at number 3, so not as far off, but
Okay.
I do think I was toying around between this and Echo for 3 and 4 because I genuinely think Echo's better made than this. But I also think the highs of this movie are higher than Echo's highs, and the lows of this movie are lower than Echo's lows. But I would take those highs in Venom 3 over the highs in Echo. So that's kind of how I settled on that.
Gotcha.
Because I think the highs in this are really good. Eddie and Venom is what we came to see. That's what we want to see. Whenever it's not them, whenever it's those stupid scientists in that lab, I could not care less. We saw an early morning showing. I was wide awake. I was ready to go back to bed. But when
Yeah.
they're on screen, when they're partnering it up, hoedown, road trip, whatever, animals turning into Venom animals, that's where the magic is. The dancing queen sequence at the Vegas casino, like all that stuff, great. All the other stuff, chuffa. And that's kind of where it's smack dab in the middle, number 3. But because I have a soft spot for Venom and Eddie, I couldn't put them in my bottom half. So I put them a nudge up above Echo. But I think this like bottom 4 for me is like very solid. I think the top 2 are far and above the top 2. I don't know if that's the case for you because I don't know what your number 3 is yet. But I do think for me, those 2 projects just soared above the rest. Like all these projects, Venom 3, Echo, Deadpool, Wolverine, are all like 2.5 star on Letterboxd, 5 out of 10s. And then
Yeah.
like Madam Web is like a 1 out of 10, but it's like an endearing one because I love it,
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
the top 2 are genuinely great. So I think it's fine, but it's like you said, it could have been so much better, especially
Yeah.
because I love that second movie. You know how much I love that second movie, so I think
Mhm.
they could have done more. And the villain, whatever the villain Andy Serkis plays, the guy who's just sitting in the jungle, who's like, "Come to me," like I hate that
Oh,
guy.
yeah. Yeah,
Stupid.
yeah, yeah, whatever
Um,
his name it was like Cole or something.
yeah. Well,
Something
we'll
like
never need to know because
that.
Venom 3 is not part of trivia unless Matt decides to do something crazy because he technically will own the league if he beats me in our season opener next year. But that'll be for another day. All right, Kels,
Alright.
what's your number 3? Since we keep going back to you now.
My number 3 is Deadpool and Wolverine.
All right, so we have the same
Um
top two. Cool.
Yeah, just had it a hair above Venom Last Dance because
Mhm.
like I said, like, my memory of it is still kind of, like, I feel like overshadowed a little bit by the excitement I felt in the theater, and I think, like, really what saves this movie for me, and honestly what I remember most looking back at it and thinking about it, is Hugh Jackman's performance, funnily enough, and
Mhm.
how I just think that it's a great duality between the 2 of them. They have great
Absolutely.
chemistry, between Deadpool and Wolverine, and, there's obviously some Ryan Reynolds doing his comedic Ryan Reynolds shtick, but then there's also some great emotional, powerful moments coming from Logan, and, Hugh Jackman's just a great actor, so it just, like, you buy it really well. It doesn't feel out of
Mhm.
place in a movie as fantastical and as big as this. And I think what I did watch was like I was saying last week, I watched the assembled episode of Deadpool and Wolverine.
Mhm.
And it was so funny to hear Ryan Reynolds. He said something along the lines of like, I've been wanting to do the third Deadpool for so long. I've pitched it in so many different ways. Like I pitched it as like a $1 million indie action movie and then like a mega million blockbuster. Like I pitched it in so many different ways. And I'm like, I really want to know what that like art house, like A24 Deadpool 3 version was in
Yeah.
his head. Like that sounds so interesting and so like crazy to think about. Um, but yeah, I think right now I can look back at it a little bit more fondly than you can, and I think that's why it's higher on my list. With a rewatch, who knows? That'll probably definitely change, but
Mhm.
I think we can both agree that there's two very solid projects that deserve to definitely be in the top
Yeah.
two. So I'm excited to talk
Yeah.
about those next.
Yeah, so let's get into it. I've said all I need to about Deadpool and Wolverine. I think you left it on
Yeah.
a high, which is good. My number 2, it's the most recent one we talked about. It's Agatha All Along. I love this one. I think it was great. I think the ending doesn't quite feel like the best ending for this story unless
Mm,
we are to get a season 2 and it concludes that way. I felt like what it was building to was a little weird looking back, but I think take the finale outside of it. I still think the finale was well made, and I think just the performances are great. I like I said, how it's structured. Each episode's like a different witch's trial, and then they try to find a way to like connect it to WandaVision without needing it to be overbearingly about that either. It still stands alone as its own thing. I think honestly the one thing I could say negatively about it is that at times I almost forgot it was Agatha's show because the supporting characters
mm,
are so good, like Patty LaPone's character
mhm.
and Joe Locke, and of course Aubrey Plaza. But I do think they still found a way to make Agatha the star regardless. I think it's a great spooky treat. It's scary enough, but not too scary. It's funny enough, but not too funny. Would have liked a little bit more musical numbers, especially with Patty, but I thought just very solid across the board. Except I think the finale kind of made me think a little lesser of some elements of it, but I thought it was just solid through and through.
Yeah, Dill. Funnily enough, Agatha All Along is also my number 2. So,
Oh, I did not expect that.
yes. Um,
Ooh, okay.
yeah, this is a really, really solid TV show for me. I loved obviously the team of women that was showcased in this movie, but also the queer representation in movie show. The queer representation that we got in this show. I love that, Catherine Hahn did a stellar job in this role. She really, really like I feel like embodied and like really obviously spearheaded the whole thing, but just like was able to just take Agatha like above and beyond than what we were
Mhm.
able to see from Justin WandaVision. And obviously there was a stellar supporting cast around her. Honestly, like these thoughts come to me like weeks or sometimes even months later after I finish watching something, but something that occurred to me was like, we never really understood why. I mean, I guess that's a pretty good reason why. It just felt like from the beginning, like Catherine Hahn and Aubrey Plaza's character had such a tumultuous relationship with one another that I thought was going to be kind of like revealed to be like, this long kind of back and forth between the two of them, like
Yeah, almost like
enemies
they
to
deserve the
lovers to
backstory instead of the backstory about the son, you know?
right. And
Yeah,
all that, and according to the show, at least from what we saw, the only thing that really happened between the two of them is that she took her son away.
yeah.
And so I guess that's a pretty good reason to hate someone, but I just thought that there was gonna be a little bit more to it.
Mhm,
Um, and then they didn't really even so then when you watch their, like, final, battle with one another, their final moments together, it's kind of, like, doesn't even feel all that, worth it or earned. And we
right.
said, like, the finale in general was just very anticlimactic, so it does have its faults there. But overall, I just really, really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited for Patti LuPone to get showered with more nominations and
Yes,
recognition because she
absolutely.
absolutely deserves it for this
Yeah.
role.
Fantastic. Yeah, best I don't even want to say that because I know it's my number one, but one of the best episodes of the year it was the Patty episode.
Yes, yes.
But I'll say right now, our number one, I was gonna save it for you for last. So why don't you tell everyone what the number one is, Kelsey?
Our number one Marvel project of 2024, I am proud to say, is X-Men 97, and I'm sure you are all, thinking it with us as well.
Yes. I just need to look at the release date one more time for the last Raimi trilogy movie really quick.
Sure.
That was 2007. Okay, yep. So this is my favorite Marvel project since 2007. I said that
Wow.
no, I said that when
Wow.
we did our review, but it might have escaped our minds. But yeah, this was my favorite Marvel project since the original Raimi trilogy. I think now that I've thought about it, I'm like, oh, the two Spider-Verse films are also up there, and like I love Logan, so like I kind of backtracked on that a little bit. But like you know what? Rewatching some episodes for this just casually on TV, like it holds up. Like, and I think the thing is because it's animation, it'll always hold up. Like, it doesn't feel
Mhm.
like it's gonna get dated in its effects and its storytelling. It's still woke because X-Men's always been woke, and it still has that throwback style of the '90s while also still having the technology of today. So it just looks crisper and cleaner. I love it. I have no fault with it. Like, I think it's a perfect series. I think it's so good, so engaging. Every character feels like they have their story. No one feels like underutilized. Jean feels important, which she normally doesn't. Gambit feels like the star of the season. Rogue as well. Magneto, Professor X comes back. Like everything's great. Wolverine's probably the least consequential person in the show because we know Wolverine. He's Wolverine. We've had so much Wolverine with Hugh Jackman now that they don't need to make him the star, and I like that. They let everyone else shine, and it's beautiful. That episode where Gambit dies is the best episode of television I watched
Mm,
this year. I think, at least
mhm.
animated and at least in Marvel. But like, I love it, love it, love it. I mean, I said it all on our review, so I'm not gonna go into it too much. But I know it's late for you, but I love it. Now you talk about
Yeah.
it.
No, Bill, you're so right. I mean, it was just the clear winner in my mind. Like we were really, really fawning over this show. Like pretty much every week, every episode we reviewed, we had like mostly great things to say about it. So, yeah, this, I'm this, I'm owed a rewatch of this one. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the episodes right now, and yeah, on IMDb, episode 5, the Gambit episode is the
What's it
highest
called
rated
again? Remember
episode.
me or witness me?
Remember it,
Ah, I was close.
and
I was close with the first guess.
it's just such a perfect blend of like beautiful storytelling, like great character development, great themes being showcased and like fleshed out, and the animation style is so solid. Um, it's yeah, it's really, really, really solid. I'm just so excited for more episodes to come with the
Yeah,
X-Men series.
and they
So
leave a lot to be desired because they do set up more to come. But yeah, I do think
yeah.
also like we've been wondering how are they going to make the X-Men into the MCU now? How are they going to make that transition? How are they going to make that leap? And I think this show proved that like I'm in no rush to. You know, like I don't need to know yet
Hmm.
because I'm fine with these versions. Like I honestly think this is the
Yeah.
best version for the X-Men because their powers are so larger than life. Like keep it here. Like, keep it here. Like, I think Deadpool and Wolverine could have been a great way to kind of say we're done. Like, bye Fox. Like, we're not gonna take you along with us. But then Beast
Yeah.
shows up in the Marvels, so who fucking knows? But I really do think it's
Right.
like it's just so good, and I can't sing its praises more. Like, I agree with you. I need a rewatch because like I haven't rewatched it all as a whole since, but I just know just based on that power and impact of that one watch, like
Mhm.
I was speechless. It was so good. And talking with others has made me feel better about it because there are some people who are like hardcore X-Men fans who also love it. So I was kind of justified knowing that it was like as perfect as I thought it was. So yeah, this is like my only 5-star Marvel project in years. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy that it was so good and that it's our number one. I'm glad you liked it too because I know you love Agatha. So I was hoping that like that would be our top two, but I was thinking that would be your number one. So I'm glad that you still hold true to that you like this
Yeah.
one more.
I think the deciding factor for me, Dill, is that, when it came to Agatha, it didn't stick the landing as strongly as I thought that it was going to.
Gotcha.
Because obviously now, now that we're theorizing over here that there might be a second season, it's like, okay, but then how are you going to do it without Agatha? Like, or is she going to be a ghost the whole time and we're just going to have to deal
I
with
don't know.
that?
Yeah.
And then also I kind of don't want to do it without Patty LuPone, without Alice Wu. Like, we lost like really, really solid characters. And like, as much as I'm happy for how Jen's, story went and that she was able to get her powers back, like, you fell in love with all of the witches. So it's kind of like heartbreaking to know that if Agatha does go on in another form, it's going to be without them, and that kind of makes
Yeah.
me sad. But
Yeah.
X-Men 97 was solid through and through all the way
Yeah.
to the end, and it's just made me more excited than ever for
Yeah.
more stuff to come there.
And it hits some emotional depths. And I think that's the thing people like don't
Yes.
realize with animation is they just say like, "Ah, it's an animated kids thing." But really, like, look at Avatar: The Last Airbender, look at Spider-Man Across the
Mhm.
Spider-Verse, Beyond the Spider-Verse, or whatever the second one's called. Into? No, Into is the first one, then Across, whatever.
Into and then
Beyond
across.
is coming. But yeah, like look at those series. Like those are the series that I have a lot of feels for. Like anime.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of good animation going on. Pixar. Look at Pixar. Like I think animation only heightens the emotions sometimes because you're able to do so much more with color and with contrast and with visuals. Like honestly, I think a lot of it is also because the color and the visuals are perfect in that show because it's an animated show. Like you don't have to worry about like this flat lighting or these mucky colors. Like it's everything's so vibrant, and I just love that. Just I have images of the Remember It episode of like Rogue and Magneto dancing in the air, and then him that close up when he's like remember me or remember it, and then he snap. Like all those little moments are just so ingrained here already, and it's only been a few months. So I love it. I'm glad it's our number one. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
Well, there we go. That's our ranking. I'm gonna recap one more time. I guess if you add up the totals, let's do that real quick.
Yeah.
6, 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. So we have a clear order here. Our number 6 combined with 12 points is Madam Web. Our number 5 with 9 points is Echo. Our number 4 with 8 points is Deadpool and Wolverine. Our number 3 with 7 points is Venom: The Last Dance. Our number 2 with 4 points is Agatha All Along. And our number 1 with 2 points is X-Men 97. So there we go. X-Men 97, the best project of the year. But all of them have their own values and their own merits. Like I don't think there was any project this year that I'd just be like, ugh, never want to talk about that, think about that again, like Secret Invasion. The worst project here is still, like I said, my third favorite. So I think after X-Men 97 and Agatha, I'd much rather watch Madam Web than I would Venom, Deadpool, or Echo. But
Yeah.
I
No,
had to be
that's
honest with
fair.
myself. But
That's real.
well, that's a wrap, Kels, for this year. Until we get into one last trivia next week, we are doing finally doing our number one contender match with Corey and with Joe, and we might have a surprise undercard for you. I still haven't figured out the scheduling completely for that, but we will. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, we're gonna get the trivia matches next week, and then the week after, next week we're doing a Kraven review. Kraven comes out this week.
Yes, I was gonna say, I was like, I
We're
wonder when
filming
they're
the
putting
matches
out
this
that
week.
then.
I just totally spoiled the behind the scenes. We're filming the matches this week. They will air next week, or they will air in 2 weeks. Next week is Kraven, so we get to see. And you know what, Kels? What we'll do at the end of the Kraven review is we'll sandwich it in this order. We'll say, is it number 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1? We'll collectively decide amongst these ones
Okay.
where it belongs in the order. I think that'll be a lot
Sounds
of
good.
fun.
I
But
like that.
cool, Kels. Until then, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You could follow me on TikTok who knows how long TikTok's gonna be around. I'm hearing a lot of crazy things about TikTok these days.
Yeah.
At Kelsey A. Kilp on TikTok and at Kelsey A. Kilp on Letterboxd as well.
Cool. You can find me at Dylan_Randazzo Twitter. If however long I'll be there. Dylan Randazzo 417. All these social medias are dying.
Yeah,
Next
seriously.
next year, I'm just gonna put our names down there, and that'll be clean, and we can just keep the plugs. We're gonna have a little bit of a revamp for next year. I'm already have some things in my mind. Revamped intro, revamped layout and graphics. It's gonna be a fun time. I promise it'll be
Cool.
worth the wait. Maybe I'll show you a little preview of what we can do real quick. Maybe I
Ooh.
can put us in little circles. Or maybe I
Ooh.
could put us in a box. Or maybe I can put us in a circle with some pink or back in our boxes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I could even do rounded corners. Look. Woo! Little rounded corner moment.
Ooh, I
See?
like
Yeah,
the
there you go.
rounded corners.
Yeah.
Very
See,
sleek.
we have a lot of experimentation we can do, but now all our headlines are all screwed up because they have different colors now. Now we're squares again. Let's end it on our circles. Let's end it here. I think this
I
is a
like
little
the
too much
circles.
space. Maybe we put like something around us. I don't know. We'll experiment with it. I feel like almost this is too alienating. Like I'm kind of trapped right now in this little bubble. But thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time with our Kraven the Hunter review that I'm sure everyone cannot wait for. I'm sure everyone bought their tickets and totally remembered it was coming out this week. We'll see you next time.